Welcome to Snetterton and the Radical Enduro Championship. 90 minutes of action ahead on a sweltering day at the Norfolk circuit. As we get ready for the start, it is Nick Jones alongside Graham Tilley on the front row of the grid as away we go. As they sprint towards Riches and then swoop through, and it's Jones who's got the early advantage. Tilley gets rather swamped by the rest of the field as this pack comprising the SR3, the SR3 RS, and the SR3 RSX all on their way. Then the car of Harry and Edward Cockle, the drivers, brothers, sharing it up into second position, applying the pressure to Nick Jones in these early stages. In fact, Cockle car moving to the lead of the race. Jones gets shuffled down into second place as the field sprint towards Agostini. Then we have got the 63 car of Scott Mansell. Mansell runs out a little bit wide under pressure. Steve Burgess also well up as in trouble and sliding off. And that is the number 7 car, Sean Maloney, is in trouble. So Maloney encountering a couple of issues in these early stages of the race as the rest of the field heading through Hoggies and Williams and out on to the Bentley straight. Of course, endurance race strategy in terms of timing of mandatory pit stop, in terms of what they do with the fuel, is absolutely key. These opening stages of the race, as James Abbott doing battle with Steve Burgess, are important because you want to be able to try and fight your way through the pack, get that good track position early on, and then begin to let the race come to you as they swoop through Coram Curve. And Jones about to lose more ground. That's Scott Mansell. Mansell, of course, who used to have such success in the Euroboss category and was the absolute outright record holder on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit for quite some time. Jones, another former single-seater race, that time in the Castle Combe Formula Ford 1600 Championship. And he is being peppered with pressure by Mark Maloney. Then we have got Steve Burgess and James Abbott next along. Abbott in the black and orange car, Steve Burgess in the green and orange machine. Then it's Mark Maloney, who actually will be passing that car over to James Abbott for the second half of the race. So Abbott doesn't want to unnecessarily slow themselves down. Meanwhile, it's the Cockles who lead out front. Then it's Scott Mansell in second, with Nick Jones heading this 4-car train for third. They're being caught by the Tilley and Bell car as well. Got rather shuffled in the early exchanges on towards Hamilton. And then teeing up for Hoggies and Williams, and Burgess looking to make the move and sliding to the inside. Steve Burgess, who has been a stalwart of the Radical Sprint series for quite some time, making a step up to Enduro racing and adapting very nicely. But of course, the real key is going to be once this race ticks beyond 20 minutes, because these Radical SR3s are really quite physically demanding to drive. Very substantial levels of aerodynamic downforce available to the drivers, and therefore G-forces being pushed through the driver's body. Place gained as well by James Abbott, so he shuffles Mark Maloney down another place as they continue to hurtle around Coram Curve and into Murray's. They flick onwards. Jones heads this train of cars. Steve Burgess, though, next along, looking to try and take advantage in the slipstream as they climb steadily uphill along the centre straight across crests, just as they arrive into Riches. And Jones has lost out. Steve Burgess may also lose out here to both Abbott and Maloney as they all swarm past Nick Jones on the brakes into the Montreal hairpin, negotiating Montreal and then onward to the left-hander at Palmer. Flicking through and then on towards Agostini. Steve Burgess consulting his mirrors. There is James Abbott. Then we've got Maloney, Nick Jones, and then Graham Tilley. Nick Jones has got Scott Morvan ready and waiting to take over him for the second half of the race. As now, what can James Abbott do now that he's been released into a little bit of clear air? It's the Cockles who lead, and it's Scott Mansell up into second position. Steve Burgess, James Abbott, this ferocious fight has just begun to dissipate itself, maybe so slightly. Still in close contention heading down Bentley Straight, nobody really quite poised to challenge just at the moment. Tilly exits Nelson, chases down Nick Jones. Jones, though, has got just enough of a buffer as they fling through the bomb hole. The brakes into Murray's. Abbott in pursuit of Burgess. Then we've got Maloney next along, and then get back to Jones. Meanwhile, here is the race leader, Cockle, who's been caught by Scott Mansell. So Scott Mansell making excellent progress, is now into pursuit of the former Ford Fiesta racer as they arrive on the brakes into the Montreal hairpin. Another Cockle car, an easy, as the identifiable target at least for Scott Mansell. But Mansell to manage his pace here because he is doing the full 90 minutes as a solo driver. So he arrives into Agostini now. Lovely shot there into the visor of Scott Mansell's car. You can just see the eyes focusing, looking ahead through Agostini, onward towards Hamilton. Leaders flick through Hamilton now and turn around Oggies on towards Williams. This is where the tactics start to become a little bit of a factor, because being an enduro race, yes, you want to fight the track position, but you also maybe want to run together in tandem, not slow yourselves down and begin to ease away from the rest of the field, build that unassailable buffer. You might just need to rely on a little bit later on in the race, particularly they're potentially going to be a little bit marginal on fuel economy. Therefore, Scott Mansell through the bomb hole, rides the camber on towards Coram Curve. Very, very fast entry to Coram, but then it really does tighten on the exit for that left-hand flick through Murray's, which they negotiate now, and then along the Senna straight. Another very strong opportunity to get the car really building up to quite a significant top speed as they head onward towards Riches. Meanwhile, Nick Jones and Tilly a little bit further back down the order, continuing their battle as they negotiate Murray's. Not too far away either from the midpoint of the race and the pit window opening. That's where we'll start to see maybe some of the different strategy dimensions coming into play. Through Riches, these two cars, both of them the new 2015 SR3 RSXs, which have just got that new bodywork, the most visible change to the car. The front and rear diffusers absolutely menacing in appearance. Just give the drivers a bit more feel as well on turning, a little bit more confidence, which they really have been enjoying. At the moment, Jones, although being chased, wouldn't say he's particularly under specific pressure as such, and therefore that is giving him just enough of a buffer to be able to maintain that advantage at the moment, as Jones and Tilly negotiate Oggies and then on towards Williams. Williams is such a critical point because it sets the cars up for the Bentley straight, which is really where they reach the maximum velocity here into the braking zone at Brundle and Nelson. Turn through now, no change in the order, but Jones having to work the car reasonably hard, runs out over the curb, whereas the number 5 car behind him doesn't do that, which suggests Jones just maybe working a little bit more he'd be liking to. And again through Coram Curve, Nick Jones just slightly offline, using a little bit more road. that begins to put some additional strain onto the tyres as they streak through. Another lap is reeled off. All the while out front it's still Cockle and Mansell who lead the way. This battle a little bit lower down inside the top 10 as they head through Riches on towards the Spooky Tree. This is the battle between James Abbott and Steve Burgess. And Abbott has been up behind Burgess for a bit of a while now without having made a huge degree of progress after the early exchanges where they're able to clear a group of cars. But again, you can see that by running in tandem, not slowing themselves down unnecessarily with dicing, it means that they've been able to ease out into quite a substantial lead over the field. Over their chasers, down the Bentley straight they come, underneath the bridge into the braking zone at Brundtland Nelson. Everybody pretty relaxed on the pit wall as now the pit window is open and the pit stops are beginning to start. Sean Maloney, however, continues on his way. Before handing over to Stuart Mosley, Matt Bell will be shortly taking over at the wheel of number 5 car. As he jumps in all the while though, Cockle and Mansell continue out front in command of the race. Now, when are they going to make their mandatory pit stop? It's not the longest of pit windows in the Radical Enduro Championship, so whilst they do have a little bit of time to play with, it is not enormous as Scott Mulvern exits the pits, the former British Formula Ford champion. Scott Mulvern is right into the mix with Cockle and Mansell. Of course, yet to make their pit stops, but Mulvern knows that that's the kind of pace that he needs to be running at. Stuart Mosley then about to take over at the wheel of number 7 car. Mosley, who has been a multiple winner so far in 2015 in the Radical European Masters, as he gets sent on his way now. Scott Mansell continuing to look to line up a move on Cockle as they head through Coram Curve on the brakes into Murray's. Mansell just trying to use the road to narrow and then widen the angles as they sprint past the pit entry. We've got a car in trouble a little bit further off in the background, and that is the car of Jennifer and Graham Ridgway. Rejoins, possibly Jennifer at the wheel. Meanwhile, here comes the race leader out of Riches on towards Montreal. And Scott Mansell has been the ever-present shadow here behind Cockle all the way since the start of the race. And certainly for the teams of that leading duo, they don't really need to unduly concern themselves. Scott Mansell, sufficient experience not to risk a move when he doesn't have to. Meanwhile, Matt Bell, having taken over the car, is now going to look to put a little bit of pace into number 5 machine, see how far up the order he can climb. There's a little bit of trouble for Maloney, who should rejoin. Indeed he does, he's just done a little bit of grass cutting, no more than that. That's the car that James Abbott will be taking over towards the tail end of the pit window. Jennifer Ridgway is in, Father Graham will take over. Meanwhile, Steve Burgess is in, just having his tyre pressures checked over. A bit of a debrief to the team. So there is the instruction. Scott Mansell telling him that he is in second place. As into pits now comes Maloney to hand over to James Abbott. Steve Burgess, meanwhile, slaps down the visor. He gets back underway now. The race leaders getting in amongst the traffic. That is Graham Ridgway, who is just ahead of them. And only now do the leaders peel into the pits. So both Cockle and Mansell come in at the same moment. And they have left it very, very deep into the pit window. Scott Mansell rolls down the pit lane, comes to a halt. He again will just be having a little bit of a debrief with the team, getting the tyre pressures checked over. Now this is Scott Mulvern, who is essentially racing cars that are currently static in the pit lane. Now how much progress can Mulvern make some exam question does he have to answer in the remaining stages of the race. That's going to be key as Cockle car heads down the pits, but it's been jumped by Scott Mansell, so Mansell leads the race. The Cockles are demoted into second place, and now we'll get a true indication really of Scott Mansell's pace, because the opening stint, you got a sense that if he had really needed to find a way past, he may have done. Now he's into clear air. Can he sprint away? Well, we are getting towards the concluding third or so of the race. Mansell has got a little bit of traffic to deal with. That's James Abbott, who he is about to catch, but the disadvantage, of course, of being the solo driver is that 90 minutes is pretty much a Grand Prix distance to cover, with an awful lot of physical buffering, and therefore concentration during the latter stages of the race does become a challenge. The positive, though, is you know exactly how the car is working when you rejoin the action after your pit stop, and that is Scott Mansell has got in his favour. He's got the lead of the race. He's now got the opportunity to begin to really break away from the field. Through Coram Curve goes Graham Ridgway. He looks to make a bit of progress. He picks his way past White as a pair of them accelerate over the start and finish line, completing another lap in this very competitive Radical Enduro Championship race. Soaring at the wheel through Riches. Graham Ridgway, another driver who has come all the way through the Radical Racing ranks, a stalwart competitor in the Radical Clubman's Cup as it then was, before making the transition with daughter Jennifer up into Radical Enduro Racing. And now we've seen a change for second. Scott Mulvin is past the Cockles as well, so Scott Mulvin and Nick Jones moving up into second place. So he thought the Mulvin would fly, and that has been exactly the case. So Scott making excellent progress. Whether or not he's got enough to close up onto Scott Mansell, I suspect that is going to be very unlikely indeed. Mansell, the best part of 30 seconds or so up the road ahead of him, but nonetheless a fine performance this for Scott Mulvin as he heads in towards Agostini now. Whether the Cockles can stay with Mulvin, of course, is another question altogether, because we're beginning to get to the stage of the race where anybody who has decided possibly to take a little bit of a risk in terms of fuel economy may just be caught out. Well, for Scott Mansell, this has been a quite imperious performance. He paid his time early on and has then just broken well clear in the latter stages. So it's the win for Scott Mansell in the Radical Enduro Championship, and dominantly so. He is quite rightly delighted with that. Meanwhile, second place, it looks as if Scott Mulvin is going to be able to withstand the Cockle challenge. So accelerating through Murray's and on to the centre straight for the final time. Scott Mulvin and Nick Jones into second position, clear of Harry and Edward Cockle, who will complete the podium as the flag goes out at the end of a very hard-fought race in the Radical Enduro Championship. So on to the top step of the podium, a celebration for Scott Mansell.
So let's start in traditional order.
How was your race?
Very good. Obviously we finished in first this time. Missing my teammate David. Unfortunately he's got a shoulder injury, so he couldn't be here today.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, you were behind Harry for the whole first half of the race. What were you trying to do to get past him?
Well, we knew that we might have an opportunity in the pit stops, so I didn't push too hard to get past him. There were a few points with back markers where there were small opportunities, but we didn't quite make it. So I stayed behind him, saved a bit of fuel and the tyres as well.
Well done. Second position. Well, it was third for a while. How did you manage to get past him?
Just a little bit of luck in the end. We were closing quite quickly, but for some reason, whatever reason, they slowed down at the end. We just managed to get past. They managed to find out obviously what was wrong. They picked their pace up again at the end, which I didn't really want to do because we were, I think we were a little bit tight on fuel, and we were nursing an engine overheating problem. So I didn't really want to go too fast.
But you know, to be fair, pole, fastest lap, and second, and the first pair.
That's it.
So you know, we can't ask for much more than that, really.
Fantastic. And how was your start, Nick?
Oh, it's better than yesterday's. Much better than yesterday's. I think the boys told me what I had to do, and I think I did my job all right. I did the best I could do. Handed over. The boy did the biz, so that's grand.